Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon or wherever you are from for this webinar. We'll give people a few minutes to make sure that everyone who wants to can join before we start. I think 1 minute grace period is probably appropriate. I would have needed it. It's great to see so many people joining. Let's give it another 30 seconds before we go. All right, thanks everyone for joining. We're super excited today. This has been a long time in the making, so we're all very excited to show what we've been working on. And presenting today will be first, very briefly, myself. I'm Nils, I'm the CEO and one of 4 co-founders at Minut. While it's mostly forgiven now, I actually have an engineering background, and this was one of the things I had worked on a few years ago. So very excited to see it launched. And with me, I have Katrin. Katrin, can you maybe introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone, it's Katrin, and I'm Minut's product manager, so covering that part a little bit, spoiler alert. And Buster, you can maybe intro yourself as well.
Of course, thank you. My name is Buster, and I take care of our larger clients and get to meet a lot of people, at least virtually, talk about how we can help them with noise monitoring, and also now today what we're going to be introducing, which I will leave Nils to introduce.
Very good. Thank you, Buster. Thank you, Katrin. So as I alluded to just in the first couple minutes, this webinar will be all about our latest release, which is the cigarette detection. And it's one of those features that is, it's a quite obvious one. Like it's probably our most requested feature. Customers, of course, have asked about it. Partners are asking about it, and so does many of our other stakeholders. So it's one that has been on the agenda for a very long time. I think we found some very early pictures when we tried to dig it up this morning. And it's been an obvious idea, but a very, very difficult thing to realize. And so we've had a really amazing engineering team that's been working on this for the past few years, and also a close collaboration with a Swedish university, Lund University. And the difficulty has really been to not only detect cigarette smoke, but to differ it from all of the many different aerosols that can be found in homes and in hospitality. So things like hairspray or incense, and that's been something that we've been doing for a long time, because of course this feature is it's dependent on being able to tell the difference. Like we can't have too many false positives and things like that. So think about that when you hear Katrin and Buster speak about it, because there is a lot of hard engineering work in that is required to bring this to reality. And I should say that, like, one of the reasons that we are able to do it is that we have such a a fully fledged team. We do really everything in-house, from the hardware development to software development. And recently we've also brought the manufacturing and supply chain much closer. So we all actually have it in the same city. So we have full ownership of the full product development and production, which really helps when you're releasing features like this. I think it's quite self-explanatory what we do. The sensor, the third generation sensor that we released this year, there's a new type of sensor inside of it, with all of the ones that have been shipping since January, and with this sensor and a layer of machine learning, we are able to classify different types of aerosols in the air and thereby detect cigarette smoke. And so it's really a joint effort between software teams and hardware teams that brought this together. And anyone who has the Generation 3 sensor, so that's any sensor that's been shipped since about mid-January of this year, and who are on a current plan, will be able to try it out. And we think it's a feature that will very quickly pay for itself. We have seen many different research conducted in different universities, to trying to assess like how much damage there is from smoke, and it's of course very different depending on your situation. But we had the University of Chicago saying that property owners lose approximately $1,600 for each claim, and of course that is not just the cost of the cleaning, but also not being able to host guests in the next day or two after. And so it's one of those things which we think will very, very quickly pay for itself. And as a sort of reminder, I think most of you who are joining this webinar probably knows Minut, but it is still everything built into the one device. So we are able to deliver on without compromising the noise monitoring with its audio ID, where we are able to detect noise, but also do a certain amount of processing on the device itself to protect guest privacy, but also to make it not trigger on background noise and things like this. There is some occupancy monitoring, which we released about a year and a half ago now, which counts the number of mobile devices in your property. So it's very useful for detecting crowds as they form. So that's another one where it really like helps paint a complete picture, so that you can get a good idea about what's happening in your property. Obviously, also motion detection for security in empty properties, knowing when guests have checked in and checked out, and as well our environmental monitoring, the temperature and humidity. There's also a very sensitive tamper detector. So as soon as any guest would tamper or touch the device, you will be notified about that immediately, which I think in this type of use case is quite important, because otherwise obviously the guest could just disable the sensor, which they can't really do here, at least not without being detected. And then also this year we released our outdoor mode. So this is something that has also been very, very commonly requested. The new sensor is weatherproof, and I should emphasize this, it's the same sensor whether it's inside or outside. And when you set it up, it basically reconfigures itself using software to be either an outdoor sensor or an indoor sensor. So it's weatherproof and should be resistant to rain, dust, insects, etc., which will be very, very useful for those of you in climates where guests spend a lot of time outside. And then, of course, now also cigarette detection in the same sensor. So over to you, Katrin. How does it work?
Thank you. Yes, so let's take a little bit of a closer look at how it works. So yeah, as Nils already mentioned as well, it's all about detecting the right thing. And in general, how we do it, again, as mentioned, there is an air quality sensor in all of the Gen 3 devices that collects data from the surrounding air, takes samples, and then we use a machine learning model, which is a form of AI, to analyze those samples and figure out what it is that that we just picked up. And the model is trained then to identify specifically smoke from cigarettes as opposed to anything else that might be sort of a confounding factor, like cooking fumes or, for instance, lighting a candle, different aerosols, I don't know, hairspray, things like that. And the good thing about AI, of course, is that it has the capacity to develop further. So there is a learning loop with real life data. So the more the sensors are out there, the more the people use this feature, there is more data gathered that will let us develop the model even further, so that the detections get even better and better over time. And one more thing that I wanted to highlight is that there are many ways to build this feature. And when we've done it, we've also paid extra attention to the battery life. So that, we've optimized the way that this feature works and the way that we collect and analyze those air samples, so that you would still get the nice long battery life out of your Minut device that you're used to. So yeah, no adverse effects there. And experience-wise, it is familiar to those of you that already use our other monitoring features. So you can turn it on for any of the homes in your Minut portfolio that you want to monitor for cigarette smoke. So it's both through the mobile and web apps that we have available. Note that you will have to have the sensor, Gen 3 sensor, installed in indoor mode for the feature to show up. If you've installed it in outdoor mode, you won't see cigarette smoke detection right now because it's not compatible with that just yet. And after you've enabled it, then there will be some days that the sensor will spend calibrating, so to say, like getting ready to give you accurate results. And once the calibration period is over, then you will start getting notifications every time that we identify cigarette smoke. So it is in that sense as well a similar kind of behavior to, for instance, noise monitoring. You will see it in the app interface, as you can see here on the screenshot, both in the mobile and web apps, also in the log that you'll also find in our apps. And you will get push notifications if you have those enabled on your mobile, or you will get email reports if you have those enabled on your user account. So the reports will also then contain the details of when was it that we identified that there is cigarette smoke in the air and in which property as well. And then one more thing to highlight, I think, is that you can also get an overview of the history of all of the cigarette smoke events that have been detected. When you go to the Minut app and to the log, then you can specifically filter for the cigarette smoke events. If you want to, you can also filter for a specific home and choose a time period so that you can sort of customize this historical overview to whatever period, whatever property or properties you want to look at and get this summary of. And of course, like, you can also add more event types if you want to look at cigarette smoke events history together with, let's say, your noise events history. So lots of customization there available to you as well. And I think that was it in a nutshell. We'll surely have more in the Q&A later, I'm sure. So I'm handing it over to you, Buster.
Thank you, Katrin. And we'll be happy to answer questions afterwards as well. And I am going to, so I work with our customers across the world, and I would like to go in and put this feature into some context of what we're actually seeing when we're talking to you guys. And I'm probably going to be, in some cases, preaching to the choir here. Maybe some of you already know what this is all about, and others might be curious as to why we're so excited about this. So in this section, we'll just look at a little bit of real life context. And I want to start by saying that when we build something at Minut, and when a Minut event is triggered in a property somewhere, in a hotel room or wherever it may be, we become, or Minut becomes, the link between the host and the guest. So it's really important to emphasize that the guest experience and the privacy and the guest privacy is always front and center of everything we do. And it's true for all of the features that we already have, and it's true for this new feature as well. And even when we have automated and streamlined automations to make your operations run smoother, at the end of the day, we're always dealing with a human at the other end. So I just think it's important to always look back on that side of things. So as I said, I work with a lot of companies from across the world. The problem that we see today is that smoking and cigarette detection is mainly a reactive response. It's a reaction to something that has already happened. It is after the fact, and it's often difficult to prove that it has happened when it has. And this would probably not have been such a big problem if it didn't happen so often. But what we see, and what I hear from clients and potential clients that I speak to, is that this happens very frequently. Cigarette smoking, vape, marijuana, that kind of thing happens very often, and it has significant consequences. So, and up until now, it has been very difficult to do anything about it. So here are some of the key things that we hear from our customers and potential customers. The first one is cleaning and maintenance fees. This one is maybe the most obvious one. After something like a cigarette smoke incident has happened, you have to restore the room. You have to make sure it is fit for the next guest coming into the room. And this can cost you quite a lot of money, and it can also take quite a lot of time. So apart from the direct cost you have with the cleaning and the sanitation of the room, you're also looking at a loss of revenue for the time period where the room isn't able to be rented out, or the next guest perhaps also complains, and you might have to compensate that person. Or give them because nobody likes to go into a room where it has even a faint smell of cigarette smoke. So you might end up having to compensate the next guest as well, which just compounds on this total cost that you have inquired now. And then finally, there is of course a way to get around or to mitigate some of these costs, and that is to impose a smoking fee on the guest. But it is very difficult to prove that a smoking incident has happened, and it's often a case of your word against the guest's words, and you don't really want to be in that situation. If you have hard data that can show that something has happened, then that's a completely different story. So what we're doing here, and what Minut is doing, is that we're allowing prevention and early detection of smoking events. So first off, just by having a smoke detection device in the property or the room that you're renting out, or the house or apartment, you're already taking a big step towards mitigating the negative effects of these types of incidents. And we see that with our noise monitoring feature, for example. We have, just by putting it in the listing, you see that the risk for a party decreases just because people know that there is a sensor in there. So that mitigating effect is something that we really shouldn't underestimate. And the same is true then for cigarette smoke detection. So prevention and early detection is important here. Next thing is we will give you the tools and the data to lean back on when something has happened. So if you find yourself in a situation where we have to prove something to a credit card company that has to side with you in order for you to get the feedback, then in all of those cases, Minut can provide you the data that will help you in those situations. And you can go back, historically as far as you like. You can pinpoint any situation or any day or date and time and dive deeper into that data. And then the last part, and this is the last thing I'll say before we open the floor for Q&A, is that as with all of our features, the number one goal for Minut is to make your life easier. And smoke detection, cigarette smoke detection will fit right into this suite of other features. And like with all Minut features, they can be automated. You have automatic guest messaging. And we also work on custom solutions for bigger property managers and hotels. So if you are managing one property or 1,000, we'll be able to tailor the solution for you, and cigarette smoke detection will fit right into the feature suite that we have today. So don't hesitate to get in touch if you're interested to hear more, or if you want to talk to me about any custom solutions that you might be interested in. Or just ask your question right now, because Nele, I think we are opening the floor for Q&A.
Yes, we are. Thank you, panel. It's really, as you can see, it's a really great innovation. So I'm really excited that you as customers will now be able to use this feature. So I've seen quite a few great questions come in and a lot of great comments. Really happy that you're happy with your Minut devices. So we'll start with question 1. So they have the Minut First models. Is that compatible with cigarette detection?
Maybe I can take this one, Nele, if you mute yourself, since we're sitting next to one another. So the Generation 3 sensor has hardware needed to enable this feature. So that is why it's unfortunately not compatible with Generation 1 or 2. So you will have to upgrade to the new sensor. As an existing customer, you can go into our web store and purchase additional sensors there for the places that you need it. But we wouldn't necessarily recommend taking all of your sensors and that you already have and replacing them, because they're very good still and will keep working for many years to come. So add it where you feel like you need, but please continue to rely on the existing sensors as well.
Perfect. And then the second question is, will it be able to detect between vaping and marijuana smoke?
With vaping, it's quite early. So obviously, over the long term, we hope to detect all of these things. But we are for now focused on the cigarette smoke part, and this is what we have built up the training data set with. That said, there is some smoke from weed in that data set as well, but we're not expecting the results there to be as good as for cigarettes, at least not at the start now when we release it.
Perfect. And I think there's a question for you, Katrin. How does the sensor distinguish between cigarette smoke and cooking smoke?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I guess the upside today or at this stage is that vaping will not give you the cigarette smoke alert. So it will, you won't get sort of false alerts from that. And yeah, as mentioned already, then in the future we are thinking specifically to pick up when it's vaping as well, and then also distinguish between the events so that you would be in the long run able to then pick which ones you specifically want to be picked up or not. But as for now, yeah, optimized for cigarette detection only, and vape shouldn't trigger it at this stage.
Perfect. Thank you, Katrin. And then we do have another question. So for the sensor to be able to detect cigarette smoke, does it need to be in the same room where the cigarette activity is happening?
Sort of, yeah. I think it's a bit hard to answer because rooms are very different. So when it comes to how it works, the cigarette smoke literally needs to reach the sensor. So that's what makes it hard for that to happen when you have the sensor in one room and the smoking is in another room. And then it also depends on different things like ventilation, like do they have the windows open and so on. So it's not like a super straightforward answer, unfortunately. But yeah, in general, it's a pretty safe bet within the same room, and probably a bit trickier to expect that smoke from one room would at least quickly enough, or reach the sensor that's in another room. So would recommend it to put it into the room that you most need monitored for cigarette smoke.
Perfect. And then we do have another question. So is it possible to change the sensibility of the cigarette smoke detection? Is there a standard level it needs to be set at, or will it just pick up varying levels of smoke?
If I understood the question correctly, then is it meant that whether the user of the feature can change the settings? So no, that's not possible right now. So the levels are sort of set by our model, and whenever we identify that there is any cigarette smoke, then we will send the alert to you as the host, and you can of course decide yourself if you want to react to that or not. And there are probably some chances in the future as well for us to add some sort of extra information about the level of just how much it was and so on. But right now it's just yes or no basis.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying. And then we do have another question specifically about the Minut device. So what is the battery life on the Minut sensor? How often does it need charging?
That would be up to a year. It depends as well. For instance, how good is the connectivity, where it's installed, like that might put a little strain on it and so on. But in normal conditions, you could expect quite a long battery life. So you don't need to worry too much about needing to charge it very often. And if you are worried about that or don't have the chance to go often, you can also just leave it plugged in. So that's also an option if you don't want to charge it extra.
And then we do have another question. So with larger homes or properties, how do we get the max coverage? So how many sensors would be recommended for a large property to actually be able to pick up cigarette smoke in multiple rooms?
Yeah, probably I think the rule of thumb is that in the main rooms or spaces where you want cigarette smoke monitored, you should probably have one sensor there. So yeah, because it's a bit, but it depends on how the layout is. Probably I think our team, when you contact us, can give a bit more tips as well when you describe your specific situation as well. So don't hesitate to reach out if you need help with advice on how to place them.
And then another question. So will guests actually receive a direct email once cigarette detection is notified? Will it just be going to property managers and owners?
So right now it's notifications to the property managers and owners. So on the host side, adding the guest messaging part, as Buster already alluded to as well, is something that we're, it just fits into our pattern, right? So to give that option as well. Right now it will only be you as the host who gets the message, and then you can choose to act on it as you need. But coming soon, let's call it that.
And then, so we do have a few mainly around differentiating smoke. So can it also pick up cigar smoke as well as cigarette smoke?
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say that it would do that, since it's like tobacco smoke altogether that the sample or that the data set that we have trained on mostly consists of, and then that's like fairly similar. So that shouldn't be any problem.
Perfect. And then I have a separate question around automatic check-in. So when guests check in, does the alarm automatically turn off once they've checked in? Or is that something that you can do from your, mobile phone or web app?
So that's not in relation to cigarette smoke detection, as I understand, but just the alarm, yeah. No, right now there is not an automation for that, so you would have to do that separately and turn the alarm off before anyone is meant to check in. But this is also something that's actually on our roadmap for the future. No specific timeline yet, but it is something that we're thinking about, since it, obviously is a very helpful feature as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Katrin. That seems to be all of the questions that have come through. If you do have any more questions, feel free to reach out to the Minut website or to reach out to my personal email address, which you'll get the email recording after this webinar. If you do have any questions, just make sure you send them through. There'll also be a recording of this webinar that will go on YouTube, so you can watch it on demand. If there's anything that you've missed and that you need to catch up on, it will be uploaded as well. Perfect. I think that's everything. So thank you, Nils, Katrin, and Buster for joining us for this product launch today.
Thanks everyone for listening in. It's been great having you.